Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ray661, and today we're going to be casting the finals of a random tournament that I decided to host. I grabbed four roughly legend players. I say roughly because a few of them were not actual of the legend rank yet in this particular season at the time of this recording. However, they have hit legend several times, and we'll be watching how this game unfolds. This is the finals. I decided not to cast this in my finals due to issues that I had with recording. Those issues are mostly due to inexperience with me, which is why this is just a short mini tournament that I just randomly hosted. So, Basquests, we've casted one of his games before, and Cott, I believe I've also casted one of his games before. So these two will be competing for $25. And it is a best of 5 conquest format. So to start with, Basquest is going to be playing a mid-range hunter against Cott's priest. This is a pre-recorded game, so I cannot move the mouse and do anything like that. So if there's anything that comes up, I can't really do anything much at this point. It's already done and over with. Mostly trying to learn how to run tournaments like these. So, on to the actual game itself. Cott opened up with a great play of a coin into the injured Blade Master, and then resurrecting the injured Blade Master on the very next turn. We'll see if Basquest can get the 50-50 roll, and it looks like he does not get the 50-50 roll. A little bit of bad luck on Basquest's part. However, Basquest is still holding a rock-solid lead on the board with having both the Knife Juggler and the Highlighted Shredder. So Basquest was deciding on whether he wanted to just go for the face or whether he wanted to clear the injured Blade Master. It's kind of more of a preference of whether you want to force the priest to rush, or whether you wanted to force the priest to actually force the priest to answer the board that you have, or you maintain board control and play safe. Essentially, that's what I meant to say. That was the angle that he wanted to handle that in. So Cott ends up playing his Alkanai Soul Priest, and then he uses Light of the Naru to deal the 3 damage needed to take out the Piloted Shredder. Another Light of the Naru ends up just hurting the Sledge Belcher, which ends up clearing the Sledge Belcher out. Conveniently for Basquest, the Armorsmith is building up armor for the Hunter, just allowing it to have a little more of sustainability. So he ends up playing Unleash the Hounds and uses this to clear the board, with the exception of the Alkanai Soul Priest. He's probably under the thought process that if Cott ends up using the Alkanai Soul Priest to remove the Armorsmith, he could use the Quick Shot to get a free card draw, assuming that the card that he ends up drawing at the start of his turn is a low enough mana cost. Get the Snake Trap triggered and basically regain the board, control of the board. However, if that does end up being the thought process, Cott will end up having the advantage of having the Wild Pyromancer and Circle of Healing combination to end up clearing the board. But it looks like Cott decides to play use his hero power instead of use the Alkanai Soul Priest, and we'll see how Basquest decides to respond to that play. It's still a little bit up in the air on whether whether that was the correct play or not. One thing of note I will say is that Cott decided not to attack with the Alkanai Soul Priest, and therefore did not test to see if it was a freezing trap either. He valued keeping the Alkanai Soul Priest on the board so he would have the ability to still force more still force Basquests to respond to the Alchemy Soul Priest in some way, shape, or form, because of the fact that it simply existing on the board is threat enough for Cott, for Basquests. So off of the top, he drew Dr. Boom. Basquests drew Dr. Boom from the quick shot, and Trogzor is now played. And we'll get to see how Trogzor ends up functioning and the way that this game is going to be handled. Cott had said, whenever I asked him about the Trogzor in his deck previously, that the reason why the Trogzor is in the deck is because he wants to avoid the big game hunter. However, Basquest seems to be out of spells and is going to be using Dr. Boom to answer that problem. Or just clearing the board in general using the weapon. Of course, that's definitely the better play, and I don't know why I thought otherwise. So the Dr. Boom comes out on board, and Cott is starting to run out of ways to handle this board. He can end up using the the Holy Fire, but it's not really the best way. He doesn't really have a good answer, so it's starting to look like the Basquest got he definitely regained control of the board, and it doesn't look like Cott has a lot of options in order to tilt the game back into his favor. So what he's going to do is he's going to end up using the Holy Fire on this turn, bring the Dr. Boom down to 2 HP, and then maybe Hero Power the Dr. Boom. Or you might end up using the Alchemy Circle combo just all together and hope that the Boom bots don't kill the remainder of the Alchemy Soul Priest. I don't think that card drawn changes the play at all. I definitely think it's still the Alchemy Soul Priest Circle of Healing combo. And the Alchemy Soul Priest is eliminated. So it ends up having to heal. Not really much that can be done. So now it's Knife Juggler, Hero Power, face. Not really much left to do in this game for Basquest. Drawing Kill Command off the top is pretty... it's damage. We're not going to complain there. Without having the Beast on board, it's only going to be 3 damage for 3 mana, not really too great. But at the same time, any damage is going to be great in the position that Basquest is in, considering that Cott cannot respond in any way, shape, or form. So he's probably going to play Sneed's Old Shredder and attempt to regain control of the board. Sadly for him, though, if a beast is drawn off the top, he's going to end up losing if my quick math is right. So 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So he does have to end up using the Shadow Word Pain or Hero Powering if he intends on surviving. The Cabal Shadow Priest might be played, but I don't necessarily think that that's the best play at the moment, considering that he's really fighting for board control, and the Sneed's Old Shredder is going to be the thing that allows him to maintain control of the board. So Basquest decides to Hero Power, attack face with the weapon, equip the new Eagle Horn Bow, and pass his turn. One thing to consider is the fact that the trap is more than likely a big reason why he didn't play Sneed's Old Shredder in the previous turn. With the Sneed's Old Shredder coming down now after the Cabal Shadow Priest triggers it, he ends up having the staying power that I mentioned previously. Sadly for him, though, I believe that's going to be... no, that's 2 off of lethal. 2 off of lethal. Quick math has failed me once again, surprising no one. So Basquest decides to keep the kill command for the obvious reason of wanting to make sure that he still has lethal in hand and doesn't decide to just throw it away. It's always better to wait and keep those cards until you know for a fact that you have lethal, not when you're close to lethal and you just need to dump it. There are a couple exceptions to that rule. For example, if you're just trying to dump damage out so you don't ever get a snag with your mana costs. Because nothing sucks more than having lethal in hand by damage, but not having it in terms of how much mana that you require. So Basquests ends up completing this game, and we'll roll on into the next one. You're going to hear some clicking as I open my deck lists. So Basquests has a few decks available to him. Basquests is running a warrior, a hunter, which is already complete, and a druid, where Cott is running a warrior, a priest, and a mage. So we'll see if either of them... So Basquests is obviously going to switch it up, but we'll see if Cott decides to switch it up, and he does. Cott decides to switch to a warrior, where Basquests switches to his druid. The druid, looking at the deck list, seems to be a double combo druid. We see double Savage Roar, double Force of Nature, Emperor Thauersane, no late game hitters aside from Dr. Boom and Ancient of Lore, double Shade of Naxxramas, pretty generic stuff. Meanwhile, Cott seems to be playing a control warrior with Revenge. Cott seems to be enjoying playing these unconventional cards to throw the opponent off. Sadly for him, Harrison Jones is hardly going to help him. Shield Block is not a great card to have in your starting hand, with I think 2 exceptions in terms of matchups. And Brawls might help him, we'll end up seeing. Revenge, however, if he ends up getting low enough, is going to be a huge help in maintaining control of the board and keeping the druid from being able to use the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo. So far at the start of the turn, we just see hero power back and forth. Pretty much with a druid and a warrior, the results are going to be even whenever you have the back and forth hero power, due to the fact that the druid gets to deal 1 damage to the 2 armor that the warrior builds up, and builds up 1 armor himself, basically balancing it out. So that whenever there are some classes where the hero power fight ends up actually having an advantage, whereas other classes are at a disadvantage. For example, a mage against a priest, if they end up in a hero power fight, the priest is just going to heal away all the damage that the mage could possibly do to the priest. So it ends up being completely pointless there. With the Azure Drake being played, it enables the swipe to be able to kill the Sledge Vulture. However, it might not exactly be the best play. Ends up deciding to play the Emperor Thauersane because 3 innervates for the hand is just a great play in general. It also reduces the cost of one of the Savage Roars. Does that enable Force of Nature double Savage Roar? No, it does not. You need 11 mana, so he needs to end up keeping the Emperor Thauersane 1 more turn in order to enable that combo. Sadly, however, I'd be highly surprised if the Emperor Thauersane ends up staying alive, and with the Fiery War Axe being drawn from the top after being Shield Block being played, there ends up being multiple options to answer for this. Cott ends up using the Cruel Taskmaster to buff up his Sledge Belcher in order to take out Emperor Thauersane, and in response, Basquests decides to play his Dr. Boom. And off the top, Cott draws Big Game Hunters. Nice top deck to... on one hand, it's nice, but on the other hand, he still doesn't really regain control of the board. He could end up using the Fiery War Axe with the Big Game Hunter to take out the Azure Drake as well. That would leave the 2 boom bots, but those 2 boom bots kill the Big Game Hunter. So you might end up using the Cruel Taskmaster to kill off the boom bot. Nope, he decides to use Revenge right now. And that is the best play. I didn't really think about that at the moment. It's a little hard to digest all of the cards when they're upside down. It's an interesting challenge and something that I have to either work on to improve or do what every tournament does and just flip them over somehow. So it's going to be something to consider. So here is a bug that I came across twice. Whenever a druid is met with two choices, the choices never go away. And I decided to wait until the turn rolled back around to see if I could get these to bump away some way. Sadly, it didn't happen, so I had to leave and rejoin the spectator mode. And conveniently, it wasn't too much of a hassle. It just came up like I said once or twice, if I remember correctly. So Cott ends up deciding on whether he wants to use Death Spite to eliminate one of the minions, and he ends up doing so. Now comes the question of whether he wants to burn Death Bite to get rid of Sledge Belcher, but sadly Basquests is not going to let Cott do so because of the fact that he has Harrison Jones in his hand. So here I'm still trying to get it set back up because of the fact that it was broken. So shield block, or shield slam rather, is drawn off the top, which is a great card to enable getting rid of the Sledge Belcher. He ends up debating on using Brawl. He can actually use Brawl and still eliminate whatever is left over. Using the Fiery War Axe and the Shield Slam. So, and a Vitality Totem comes out. Interesting. Basquest with a little bit of an apology. Not apology, a call for a mistake. Basquest decides to use Wild Growth to draw a card right now. He doesn't really see any plays that he can do that he would need the extra 2 mana. And he ends up drawing a Druid of the Claw, and he decides to play it in taunt form, of course. As well as dumping the rest of his hand with what's that zombie called? Man. I was doing so good and I got that snag where I can't remember the name of the card. Regardless of the fact, he ends up playing the 1 mana 2/3 Death Rattle, heal your opponent for 5. And I end up getting caught in that stupid bug again where I'm left with 2 choices and it's not working for me. So I decide to instead start spectating Cott, and what happens? His Nefarian gives you a choice of 2 cards. With oh no, never mind. It's Mark of the Wild. Mark of the Wild isn't a choice one. So Sylvanas and Innervate's drawn from the top. Sylvanas is more than likely going to be played on the next turn with the piloted Shredder, assuming that he doesn't have draw the Force of Nature. He ends up deciding to play the Savage Roar anyway and uses the Zombie Chow. I remember this now. He ends up using the Zombie Chow to clear out Nefarian, which isn't a bad choice at all. It maintains board control. It's the only real issue that I can think of is the fact that Control Warrior, when faced up against Double Combo Druid, and this is coming from someone who played Double Combo Druid up to 500 wins, you want to have all of your burst damage available to you. You don't ever want to waste your burst damage. And using the Savage Roar there, he only did 8 damage out of the 14 that the combo allows you to do. So, and the reason why you want to keep all of the burst damage as long as you can, until it's absolutely necessary to use it to maintain board control, is because of the fact that the warrior is capable of building up so much armor and also maintaining control over the entire board with big drops. Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, Nefarian. You have some of them run Ysera. You have Grommesh Hellscream that comes out as just a minion, a fat minion instead of a finisher. You have your own Sylvanas. You have so many big minions that Druid doesn't have any hard removal to handle that problem. So eventually, like, these soft removals, such as Swipe, end up not being enough to keep control over the board. And then eventually the Druid just has to use his burst cards to deal damage and ignore the board and hope that he can finish before the control warrior gets to that point where he just keeps dropping fat minions. And you could already see that effect happening right now, where Basquests doesn't have a nice answer to the Dr. Boom. However, Basquests does have the advantage of the fact that he's already been working Cott down in HP, so he could just wait for the combo to show up, or, conveniently for him, end up getting Big Game Hunter off the top of the deck. Big Game Hunter seems to be working out in both players' favor in terms of showing up at just the right time. So Cott is considering using Mark of the Wild on one of his boom bots. It would allow that boom bot to eliminate either the Big Game Hunter or the piloted Shredder if he chooses to run it into one of the 2 minions for board control. He could use the Cruel Taskmaster and buff up that boom bot up to 5 and clear the Ancient of Lore as well, which ends up being what he does. Or maybe. Well, he's considering it. Alright, there we go. And I do agree with that play, because chances are one of the targets hit is going to be the minions, but chances were against him. It was the right amount of damage, though. And again, bad luck for Cott. And he's just not having a good time at the moment. So it looks like Basquests is pretty much has this game in the bag. He's going to end up using choice. Please work. Please work. Please work. Okay, there we go. He ends up drawing a card off of his Wrath. And that ends up being an interface, pretty much a dead card. He might end up playing it strictly to dump his hand in the future. It's an extra 2 damage that he'll be able to get out of the combo using the Keeper of the Grove.
Well played. Well played.
So it looks like the game is, for all intents and purposes, over as Force of Nature Savage Roar combo comes out. And that, I'm not even going to bother counting that damage. It's high enough. 28 damage. Fast math. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, sue me. But I see 28 damage capable on board, so more than enough to eliminate Cott. And we're down to our final deck for Basquests. The final deck being a warrior. And like I was mentioning earlier, so let's mention Basquests' deck. So the fat minion issue that I was talking about with Druid, starting from the bottom, he has 2 Sludge Belchers, which are a little bit difficult, but not too difficult because of the fact that you have the Ancient of Lores. You have Emperor Tharosane. You have 2 Shield Maidens, all of which have the same issue as Sludge Belcher. With being at 5 HP, you don't have, your soft removals aren't really enough. Sylvanas, same issue, and also steals one of your minions. You have Dr. Boom, you have Grommash Hellscream, Alex Straza, Ysera. Those are the cards that are in Basquest's deck. And Control Warrior can also have Ragnaros, and is that pretty much all of the fat minions? I think I'm missing one. But you get the point. It's just so many threats that the druid has to go through. It was actually pretty lucky on Vasquez's part being able to win that matchup, because it's definitely not a favorable matchup at all. So it seems like the two players end up going back and forth with their hero powers. Vasquez decides to use shield block instead of his hero power. Pro players seem to be up in the air whether they think that a turn 3 hero power is better than a turn 3 shield block, and you saving the shield block for a future turn. I can't really say either direction. If I were to analyze it a little bit deeper, I would probably say it's a matchup dependent. So it is definitely something that I would have to really digest. It's such a small play, but both of them definitely have their benefits, and it's just ultimately a question of which benefit works better for which matchup. So we still have some more hero power and passing between the two players. Not really a lot. And we see another interesting card in Cott's hand. We see Deathwing. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses of Deathwing is the fact that it discards your hand. So you have to either be in a desperate situation where you're forced to play Deathwing, or you would have already dumped your hand and used Deathwing, which ends up still being a disadvantage on your front. So Basquest decides to finally play his card, his first card in the entire game, aside from Shield Block. But let's be honest, because it cycles and it just builds armor, it's not really... I don't know if you would count that as the first card. But ends up playing Emperor Tharosane, reduces the mana cost across the board, ends up being 8. It looks like 8 cards being reduced. Cott ends up playing his Deathbite and Cold Taskmaster to eliminate the Emperor Tharosane. Not too bad of a play, but at the same time it does reduce the armor, preventing his shield slams rather, from being able to do quite as much. And Vasquez gets the first Harrison Jones off, which is a huge strength. Generally, when it comes to Control Warrior, the first Control Warrior to get the Harrison Jones proc generally ends up being in an advantage over his opponent. We'll end up seeing if it ends up mattering in this game. Based on the board state, I would say that it doesn't really put the advantage in Basquest's favor quite yet, but it was a tilting factor. And let's be honest, it never feels good to have your weapon Harrison Jones, but conveniently Cott is going to be able to pull a reversal with his own Harrison Jones when Basquest decides to play his own Deathbite, which every Control Warrior runs, so it's going to be virtually expected. Cott is debating on whether he wants to use the Fiery War Axe to eliminate the Harrison Jones. The HP, as most players on the upper end should know, is nothing more than a resource for you to expend to gain control over the board and control and card advantage. The problem is however, Cott has not built up hardly any armor for his shield slams. I don't think he played any of his armor building cards either, so he still has that advantage going to him whenever he ends up starting to dig into his deck. But it's not really looking that great in his favor, considering the cards that he has in his hands compared to Basquest. Basquest is going to play Ysera on the next turn. You could play Dr. Boom and hero power. It's not Cott's. The tempo is in Basquest's favor, and there's no denying that. So Cott ends up decides to play Sylvanas and hero power and just passes his turn, where Basquest draws his own Shield Maiden. Clearing the board is obviously going to be the best play for Basquest. Now comes the question of whether he's going to end up playing Ysera right now, or if he's going to take a different route. He ends up hero powering, so hero power and passing, he thinks he's in a strong position on board, strong enough where he will just wait patiently. And that makes sense considering that there is a Sylvanas on board. Sylvanas needs to be answered now before he can play any of his bigger minions such as Dr. Boom or Ysera. It's still up for a debate on whether Dr. Boom could have been played, because if Dr. Boom was played and Ysera somehow gets eliminated, the only real threat is the Sylvanas. The only real threat is if Cott ends up playing Brawl, where Sylvanas can grab whatever ends up remaining. But even then, if Brawl ends up being played, no, that's never mind, because Sylvanas could have eliminated the Sledge Vulture. So it's still not. I was going to say it was still a 50-50 on whether he walks away with a slime and leaves one of the other minions, but that's not the case at all, because the obvious play to that would have been to Sylvanas the Sledge Vulture. Point was, though, is Basquest didn't want to place any big minions on board for the threat of the Brawl with a Sylvanas on board. Now that that threat is eliminated, he's safely placed Dr. Boom, and Cott has to answer it somehow, and it doesn't look too good for him, because sure, he's going to play Big Game Hunter. Big Game Hunter gets eliminated by the two Boom Bots or the weapon, and then Ysera gets placed on board, and what's going to come after that? And Basquest may be in for a surprise with the Deathwing, but at the same time, it's looking like there isn't going to be too much that Cott has to offer after Deathwing. One possibility could have been that he, instead of playing one of the Acolytes of Pains, he could have played Fiery War Axe to eliminate the other Boombot. He could have played Harrison Jones. So with Shield Maiden coming down, Basquest is still commanding a huge position on board with a substantial higher HP count with 17 armor. And Cott doesn't really have much of an answer in response to it. He ends up hero powering, playing his own Shield Maiden and using the Fiery War Axe, but not attacking anything. That still doesn't really help the situation at all. And now Basquest, realizing that he is commanding the position, contemplates on whether he wants to play the Ysera now or not. He ends up saying no. He ends up eliminating the Shield Maiden using the Death Bite and Cruel Taskmaster, and still maintains board control. Cott is starting to really be back into the corner, and with Harrison Jones and Brawl, Double Armor Smith, and Deathwing, he can kind of look like it's the problem that Cott is having right now is anytime he does anything to gain any type of semblance of a board control, Basquest just throws out another fat minion in classic Control Warrior fashion, and Cott just can't respond to it. He doesn't have tempo, and it's killing him. It is literally killing him in this game. He does end up using the whirlwind from the Death Bite to build up a bunch of armor through the Double Armor Smith, but it's still not looking good for him at all. The only way that I could see Basquest throwing this game away is by overextending into a brawl, or which Basquest is assuming is going to be in Cott's deck, or overextending into the Deathwing, which would be completely blindsiding. Is that how you say blindsiding? It's just going to throw Basquest through a loop whenever Deathwing finally comes out, if it ever comes out. But Cott is just having. Basquest is smartly not doing anything to force to overextend and force the game back into Cott's favor. It's essentially Basquest's game to lose. With Ysera, with Alexstrasza being drawn, Cott does have a way to bring the HP back into a manageable level. Because with 51 HP on Basquest's side, it's not going to be good. It's going to be tough to claw through all of that. So Alexstrasza can at least deal 15 damage in one go. And with Shield Maiden coming down, it's now sitting at 56 HP, effective HP on Basquest's side. We'll see what Cott draws. It doesn't look... So again, Basquest is not overextending. He's still using his semi-smaller minions. Still fatty, so don't get me wrong. A 5/5 is not easy to get rid of. But luckily for Cott, he's starting to actually draw the big minions. The question really is now is whether it's enough. With Nefarian and Alexstrasza in hand, that might be too slow and too late to function that way, especially considering that you have a Shield Slam, you have a Big Game Hunter, both of which will answer both Alexstrasza, Nefarian, and all three, Nefarian, Alexstrasza, and Deathwing. So he ends up playing Nefarian. It's the only play, it's the obvious play. Alexstrasza, while it does reduce the HP to 15, but it maintains the 28 armor, it's just not enough to make a difference. Whereas Nefarian immediately makes a response with Inner Rage being drawn, allowing him to use Execute on the Ysera. But, as I was saying earlier, Big Game Hunter comes out and responds to the AA Dragon. And then he ends up playing the Emerald Drake to have another fat minion on board. Cott has been on the bad side of having board control this entire game, and he still cannot maintain it.
I can take the hit.
Cott ends up building his HP up to 56 himself, compared to Basquest's currently 60, using his Shield Maiden that he draws off the top. But at the same time, while it is a strong play, is it enough? We'll end up finding out now. Basquest has dropped Alexstrasza, which is the last big minion that he has on board. So now it's basically now or never for Cott to end up gaining control over this game. Playing a Dr. Boom is not going to be enough. Alexstrasza will end up basically killing herself through Basquest's own Alexstrasza, leaving the Emerald Drake on board. And Cott does not know that Basquest has no more threats in hand. So we'll end up seeing how this works out. The one thing I will note, though, is Basquest has both Shield Slams in his hand at 25 armor, and no way for Cott to eliminate that armor in any quick fashion. So Cott ends up contemplating on playing the Dr. Boom. The Dr. Boom is easily answered by the Emerald Drake or the Shield Slams. So we'll end up seeing how this ends up working out for him. Deathbite is drawn by Basquest. Deathbite doesn't really change the board state hardly at all. And his Shield Slam is used. 25 damage dealt to Dr. Boom. We're starting to end up running on the end of both decks, so we'll be seeing if fatigue ends up mattering in this particular game. It's starting to really look like a 3-0 for Basquests. It has for a while, considering the Basquests has had tempo in the Control Warrior matchup, and Cott has not been able to regain control. Something that I will learn from this game in particular is just how much tempo matters in a Control Warrior. If you gain tempo and maintain tempo, the opponent's Control Warrior just will not be able to respond to it. And it's something that I don't get me wrong, tempo is a valuable position. Like, having tempo is a valuable thing to have in any matchup ever. Tempo is probably one of the deciding factors on whether you're winning or losing in a lot of matchups. But in Control Warrior, it is probably the defining factor. So, Cott can end up playing his own Alexstrasza and using Execute to eliminate the Grom. And it's probably going to be the best play. Problem with that is, going back to the Shield Slam, there is a response. Now comes the question, does Basquez have a response for the inevitable Deathwing that's going to come out? And with Sylvanas coming out on board, the answer might be yes. However, Basquez decides to use Sylvanas to steal Alexstrasza, thinking that that is the last major threat that Cott has in his hand. Now we'll see if Cott ends up taking advantage of the fact that Basquez has thrown away one of the last ways to maintain control over the board. So for once, the board is entirely empty, but again, Basquez maintains tempo and a huge HP pool. And Cott is almost out of cards. This is not looking good for him. He ends up playing Deathbite. He's trying as hard as he can to hold out on this Deathwing, and Basquez is probably thinking, what is this dragon? Since now he knows for a fact that it is a dragon. What is this dragon, and how is it going to affect this game? Being that he is at 45 HP, even after Alexstrasza, I don't think Basquez is too concerned on losing this game. However, it's Deathwing. Deathwing can change the game. And ultimately, let's do some math. Alright, so 7 HP, that means 1, 3, 6, so 4 draws. 4 draws.
Let the pain speak to me.
Here comes the brawl. The brawl is going to be the deciding factor. It's not. Oh, he's going to... Wait, what? The brawl was the only way that Basquez could win this game. With one exception, if Deathwing smacks the Acolyte of Pain. Now, or if Cott ends up leaving the Acolyte of Pain alive, you lose that route. That Cott through the game through that. Oh, it wouldn't have mattered because if he used Deathbite, there was no outcome outside of... I don't think there was any way that he could have avoided Deathwing not dying in that outcome. Because the Death Rattle of Deathbite would have hurt Deathwing in either way. So what was the answer for Cott there? I don't think there was one. Cott had lost. Well, that's GG regardless. That's going to be a 3-0 sweep for Basquests. And Deathwing coming out for the final card, but not being enough. We see the inherent weakness with Deathwing right then and there. So I'm going to go ahead and cover the weakness before I end up closing this cast out. So the problem with Deathwing is, as I mentioned earlier, you're stuck into one of two issues. There is a lot of hard removal in the game. So, issue number one, you either hold on to Deathwing until your hand is empty, and then you rely on Deathwing to basically maintain board control and tempo in order to regain card advantage. The problem with that is Deathwing fat enough to do that? When you have big game hunters, shield slams, executes, assassinates, the what's the hard removal for Warlock? So you have both of the power overwhelmings to buff up a minion. You have the what is it? Soul absorption? Is that what it's called? I can't remember off the top of my head. But the 6 mana destroy minion, gain 3 life. You have assassinate, which most rogues don't generally run that, but it's there. It exists. You have all kinds of hard removal that can hit Deathwing. So even if he had 24 HP, if he came across one piece of hard removal, it's enough to make you holding on to him and waiting for your card to your hand to refill. The option two is the desperation play, where you play Deathwing when you don't have an answer to the board and you use it to wipe the board. The problem with that is it discards your hand and puts you back in the same issue that Deathwing use number one has. The only real benefit you get is you would use it a lot earlier than you would with option number one. However, by using it earlier, you only increase the chances of your opponent having these hard removals based on the fact that your opponent probably hasn't used them yet on any of your bigger creatures. So, with that being said, Deathwing still doesn't regain card advantage because of the fact that more than likely he's going to be eliminated after that fact. So Deathwing definitely is one of those cards that looks amazing. I mean, it's a 10 mana 12/12, but the cost of discarding your hand is honestly the thing that's going to hurt Deathwing more than anything else. So if they remove the cost of discarding your hand, it's still up for debate on whether it's useful or not, but it definitely does shouldn't be seen in any decks, in my opinion, in its current iteration. So I'm going to close that out with that opinion. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see a Strife Crow or a Kalento type of person end up adding Deathwing to the deck and making it work in the competitive scene. Time will only tell. We have so many sets that are coming out, or that are coming out, that or more than likely coming out, that could end up making Deathwing viable. We'll end up seeing. So this was Ray661. I'll be signing out. I hope you all have a good night. I hope you all enjoyed the finals, even if it was a little bit one-sided. I definitely do plan on doing more tournaments. I intend on doing it weekly, but I'm still kind of scouting out for sponsors and organizations to help support it whenever I'm end up being busy. And I also I lost my train of thought. I don't. With terms of the casting, I'm more using the weekly tournament to be practice for my casting, but I do plan on having it as a serious contender as well by offering BlizzCon points every single weekend. The real question is whether that gets to be a little bit too much in terms of maybe it's going to be too much in terms of organizing it. There we go. That's for a really unusual word for me to say at the moment. Sometimes you just get those random snags and you don't know, like with words, and you're just like, it doesn't sound right. I still have not set up my Twitter yet for this, so I would tell you to follow my Twitter, but I can't. So this is Ray661 signing out. Have a good one.